Could the Rams bring back Brandin Cooks? Let's talk about it. So the Los Angeles Rams, the chatter around the league is that they are going to end up reacquiring Brandin Cooks via trade from the Houston Texans. Now, what will that take? Likely a second round pick from what I've been told. However, a third rounder might be able to do it. But why would the Rams be interested? Well, for starters, it could be because Odell Beckham Jr. is not a guarantee to come back. But in addition to that, on top of that, they could also want to have OBJ with Brandin Cooks. I would not rule something like that out. The fact the Rams want Brandin Cooks is honestly not hard to believe. When you look at what he did in that offense, he caught 80 passes one year and 70 of those 80 passes moved the chains. This is somebody that the Rams, no doubt about it, found a role for and immediately reaped the rewards. Brandin Cooks is a deep threat. You talk about adding that with Van Jefferson, who ironically they received via the Brandin Cooks trade. That pick became Van Jefferson. But if they were to get Brandin Cooks back, there is speculation around the league right now that Brandin Cooks would take less money next year, some sort of pay cut, to be a part of a contender. And I think with that contract, that says a lot. He has an out in 2024 that could help you out as far as getting out of a deal. And looking at it, the out in 2024 would be $8 million in dead money. So why would the Rams take a guy who they already traded away, they already paid dead money for? Why would they take this guy back? Well, go and watch Brandin Cooks highlights or go and watch his film because you can see clearly the fit is there. I understand they have more pressing needs, and I'm not saying I would do this over those needs, but what I will say is if the Rams were to acquire Brandin Cooks, I'm not the person to come to and say that I'm going to dislike this. I actually really like Cooks. I think he's one of the most undervalued and underappreciated players in this league. When you look at what he's done, he's had 6,000-yard seasons in this league. He has 8,000 yards, and he's not even 30 years old yet. This is a guy who's a deep threat. He can run precise routes. And in addition to that, you look at him, and he's a not only possession guy who can move the chains, but in addition to that, when you look at what he can do after the catch, it's very impressive. Brandin Cooks has the total package except for the fact he's not overly tall. He's not a big-bodied receiver, but that's really the only thing he doesn't have. We already know once upon a time, Sean McVay and the Rams decided to go out and get this guy, and it worked out very well. 2018 was arguably his best season of his career with Jared Goff. Just imagine what he could do with Matthew Stafford and not being the focal point of the offense, not being worried about. You talk about adding him, and I don't know how a defense is able to stop an offense that has Brandin Cooks, Van Jefferson, Allen Robinson, and of course the best wide receiver in football, Cooper Kupp. That's not even including the running backs, and who knows what they do there. And then in addition to that, tight end Tyler Higbee, who's having arguably his best season of his career. When you think about all that, it's almost like the perfect storm. But will the Rams actually pull the trigger and trade for Brandin Cooks? That I'm not so sure of. I believe that they will acquire a pass rusher, and I believe as of right now, Brandin Cooks is staying put. Barring a major change, I'm not expecting him to be a Ram. I would love it in a sense. I don't think he's a need, and I don't think they need to trade more draft capital for him. But I do very much like the idea of going out and getting what works. And Brandin Cooks fit this offense before. And so I can't disagree with them thinking that grabbing a guy like that would help and do wonders for an offense that is struggling in this league right now. So we will find out. Will Brandin Cooks be a Ram? That's up for debate. But we're going to find out real soon once the trade deadline approaches and it kicks off on Tuesday. Again, trade deadline, 4 p.m. Eastern time. All trades need to be finalized by 4 p.m. Eastern time, and that is that. So if you guys like this quick hitter video, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. In conclusion, I would say I'm all for the idea of acquiring Brandin Cooks. I'm not necessarily for giving up the capital to get him. I don't think it's a need, but if it is for him, I'm not going to complain. I think you already see what he did with the Rams. Yes, he had the down year in 2019, dealt with some injuries, dealt with Jared Goff's fall off. But I think at the end of the day, if you were to put him with Matthew Stafford, all the receivers around, it becomes nearly impossible to stop this offense. And that's something that I have to point out. Whether they bring back OBJ or not, it becomes near impossible to stop this offense. And I didn't even mention Ben Skoranek, who could also line up at fullback and create another dynamic for this offense. But in conclusion, again, I do think that he's a great player. He's very underrated. And if they made this move, I'd be okay with it. I know that does beg the question. A lot of people are going to ask, why didn't they just keep Robert Woods? I'm no mind reader, so I couldn't tell you. Was kind of surprised to see him go in the first place, but obviously the contract, was the reason for that. However, looking at this, a 1,200-yard receiver at one point with the Rams, had one of the best starts of any of these Rams acquisitions. His first 3 games versus Allen Robinson's are like night and day. However, Allen Robinson is yet to take the next step. And I'm hoping that one of these trades wouldn't include Allen Robinson. I would assume not. But again, who knows? We don't know. We're going to find out a lot more. And I can't wait to be way more in tune once we find out who they acquire. But all bets, I would imagine, should go on the fact the Rams are going to have a player come the deadline. I think they're going to make a trade, and I think it's going to be an edge defender. After that, we'll see. But until next time, I am Jake Ellenbogen, and I am signing off. You guys take care. Later.